Very good. Thank you, Anna. Okay, this is early modern Thanksgiving. It's not really Thanksgiving traditional dishes for the North American feasting time. It's ingredients that are commonly found in that feast that I found recipes for in Francisco Martinez Montino's The Art of Cooking, Pie Making, Pastry Making, and Preserving from 1611. Um, there's turkey, there's squash, and chestnuts. Chestnuts not necessarily something that my family ate, but I understand that some people do have that. It is being a fall crop. Um, so there are several squash recipes. Um, we're only going to do one of them, but there's how to roast a turkey, how to serve a turkey, and um, a pie made from turkey giblets. And this is what the book looks like. I highly recommend it. It has come down in price some since the initial publishing, so it's still not cheap, but not as bad as it was. It's around $90 last I checked, but it's hardback and it's good. And there's 506 recipes. Okay, turkey. Concerning pavo, the word pavo on its own used to mean peacock. Now peacock is pavo real. So now pavo means turkey. And Professor Carolyn, who did the translation of Martinez Montino, deals with the transition of the meaning of that word. She cites several noted food historians here in her footnote, which I have given you, that they all seem to agree that the meaning of the word pavo changed from peacock to turkey in the 16th century. So this is not a peacock recipe. This is a turkey recipe, at least according to the cited scholars. So I'm going to quite happily go with that. And one of, yes, the footnote does refer to not only Martinez Montino, but also Hernan de Mercedes' cookbook talking about turkey. His basically talks about how to carve one. And this is the original over here. And this is what Google Translate told me it means, which is basically how to slice up the turkey. And it's not very different from good old Francisco's recipe either. Now, the turkeys that the Spanish in 1611 would have had access to were wild turkey, of course. They are not the turkeys that you're going to find readily available in the supermarket these days. If you have access to wild turkey and want to use it, that would be closer. That would be a much closer approximation of what was being consumed in period. There's also what Viscountess Elsie told me about are called hunt club birds. They are birds that are, rather than raised for the supermarket, they are raised for hunting clubs. So these are birds that are still, if you live in an area that doesn't actually have wild turkeys, we do have them here in California. But if you live in an area that doesn't have them and you need to have the bred for your hunting party, that's what the hunt club birds are. If they get over 20 pounds, they can't fly. If they can't fly, they're no fun to hunt. So, and wild turkeys, of course, would be ones that could fly because, otherwise everybody would eat them right away and they wouldn't get big and tasty. 20 pounds live weight would be about 75% to 80% dressed weight being after it's been plucked and had all of the parts you're not going to eat removed. So you want a bird that's 15 pounds, not 50. That's a huge turkey, 15 pounds or less. And if you want to know more about turkeys, Elsie's going to be doing a class on turkeys at the in-person West Coast Culinary in February. I hope to
And
see many of you there.
Eden says that she'll let you know about in a few weeks what kind of turkey her Spanish butcher sources for her.
Oh, lovely. Um, If we have time, I will tell you later about my mother's adventures with getting a turkey in Spain. Um, the first part of Martinez Montino talks about the offices in the household and their duties and serving and all of that. Once you get to chapter 2, which is the bulk of the book, um, the first recipe is on how to roast a turkey. It's this recipe here, how to roast a turkey. Very first thing. So, which I think is cool that it's the very first recipe. I have it all out here. This will be available online, so you don't have to scribble it down while I zip through all of the things. We're going straight to the redaction because that's perhaps a little more practical and useful. So you take the turkey, lightly salted, and you can put some cloves in there. I don't like cloves, so I left them out. And they do mean my downstairs neighbor always chooses to interpret cloves as cloves of garlic, so because he really does not like cloves. That's not what they mean here. So I just skip the cloves altogether. Sear the turkey on the grill. We have a comal in the middle of our stove, so I seared the bird, picking up all all six sides actually, and then wrapped it up in bacon and stuck an awful lot of toothpicks in this birdie to make sure all the bacon stayed on it. This turkey, you do not have to worry about this bird drying out because she is wrapped in bacon all over and then wrapped in paper. So all the juice stays in there with the bird. You are not getting a dry turkey with this method. I enclosed it in the parchment and then tied it up with butcher's twine because I don't have a rotisserie, and probably even if I had one, it probably wouldn't be big enough for a turkey. So I put it in a roasting pan with a roasting rack and rotated it every 20 minutes for 3.5 hours. So it's not a fire and forget kind of bird, but it did turn out quite juicy. Not pretty. You don't get your, golden skin Food Magazine turkey, but you do get a juicy bird. And the nice thing about the sauce that goes with this bird is that it is served at room temperature. So rather than having your last minute scramble to make gravy out of the drippings, you can make this at a leisurely pace while the bird is cooking. And you don't have to worry about this, scrambling at the end to make your traditional gravies. Almonds and the liver of the turkey. And if for some reason the turkey didn't come with any livers, you can get a couple of chicken livers. Get two because chickens are smaller than turkeys. And since it's going to be ground up, I cooked the liver quite thoroughly till it was, quite brown and no pink left. Ran it through the mini prep with the almonds, and then added some sugar, and then you put all of this in broth, and you bring it to a boil 3 times, which basically it reduces it. And I got a nice creamy looking thick sauce. I used 1.5 cups of broth, and reducing it down and straining it through the strainer. I ended up with a cup of sauce, just a sufficient amount so far. Fine sieve, so you get all of the particulates of the almond out of there, and of the liver too. And then add a little bit of cinnamon, a little lemon juice. If you want more, I used a teaspoon of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. If you want more, that's fine. Turned out tasty as it is. It is, since it has sugar in it, it is sweet, but that is a common feature of late period high class food because they're showing off that they've got sugar. Another part of Francisco's book talks about how to carve the turkey. So it's not all that terribly different from modern carving instructions, except for one thing that I didn't do simply because I would need another person to help me carve it. You pick it up and put it on a fork so that it is basically it's standing upright, like um just it's sticking up there, and you would carve with your other hand, and the pieces would fall off, and you're showing off how good you are at carving things. This is a common practice in late period Spanish carving manuals. Sticking a thing on a fork and then carving it and having the pieces fall artistically onto your platter was a way for the carvers to show off. The one I think that is particularly silly is cutting a peach that way. Um, you stick it on a fork and you peel it with your knife, and then you cut it into segments, and it's showy. Anyway, so this was a thing they would do. Basically, you cutting the leg off, a slice between the leg and the body, and then a slice on the outside, and then hacking it through the bones in the joint, which is fairly easy because this turkey has been thoroughly cooked. Same process with the wings. And then you cut down either side of the backbone, release it from the backbone, and then you flip it over and slice down either side of the breastbone, and then make several other slits lengthwise in the breast and stick in bread. I don't know why you stick the bread in, other than bread's tasty. But that's what they would do. And you get, as I say, as you can see, it's not the prettiest of birds because you don't have a nice brown, golden skin on it, but it is quite moist. I From the pictures, you can tell that I had already removed all of the paper and the bacon, but of course did not discard bacon because bacon yummy, already cooked. Let's just use that up in the turkey leftovers too. Then we have the turkey giblet empanada. I'm sorry I'm going through so fast, but 50 minutes, 26 slides. We're going through speedy. This, again, we have the whole recipe from Professor Carolyn's translation, but it's easier to just deal with the redaction part. So because that's in smaller chunks and has pictures. We take the neck. You're making one of the parts of what you cook to then make the filling for the giblet empanada is a sausage that is made from the skin of the neck of the bird. The turkey neck that came with the turkey I purchased already had the skin removed, but there was also the big flap of skin still there attached to the bird. So I cut that skin off and set it aside to then use in this project. You do not fill the turkey neck skin with the neck. You fill it with a mixture of liver and onions, the turkey liver, or since I already used the turkey liver in the sauce, I used 2 chicken livers, and a little bacon and some onion. The bacon, mostly it's for the fat, for sauteing up the livers and onions. Then you add in some spearmint and 4 eggs, and you scramble the eggs into it. So you cook it until your scrambled eggs are cooked dry. Turn the whole mixture out on the chopping board and chop it up to make sure that you have a fairly even and smooth consistency. Add in breadcrumbs and 2 eggs and Francisco spice mix, which we'll deal with in a minute, lemon juice, and salt. I didn't want this any runnier than the 1 egg made it, so I didn't add the second egg. If you want to add 2 eggs and just have it juicier, go right ahead, but this is how I did it. And then I wrapped this neck skin around it and then tied it up with butcher's twine. I tried with toothpicks, and that was insufficiently sturdy to hold in all of the stuffing. There was a lot of the stuff using the quantities listed here. There was a lot of stuffing left over. I just set that aside and we mix it later into the empanada filling. My cursor just, oh, there it is. Sometimes it hides. Okay, here we go. And then for the rest of the filling, what you do is you cook the neck and the wings and feet and the neck skin sausage and a little bacon all in a broth. My turkey did not come with feet, so I went and I got 4 chicken feet on the assumption chickens are smaller birds, so 4 chicken feet equals 2 turkey feet. Cook that in a broth. I cooked for at a simmer for a couple of hours because I wanted to make sure to get whatever goodness was in the wings and the feet, since they don't have very much meat, but they have other tasty aspects to them, was thoroughly imbued into the other parts. So then take them out, strain it out and let it cool. Don't throw away the broth. This is a nice, rich turkey and some chicken broth. Set that aside. We're going to use that later. Not in this, but I'm going to use it later this week. Okay, and you remove the bones and chop up the meat. Mostly it's neck meat, because like I said, the wings and the feet don't have very much meat. And I chopped the sausage. I removed some of the skin because it was just, if you like a lot of fat in the filling, leave more skin. I removed some of it because it was just too fatty. The consistency I find yucky. But I also mixed in the leftovers of the neck sausage filling. So this is the stuff before boiling. This is removing the neck skin, and here's the little cooked sausage. And this is the whole mess amalgamated together. Then you make sweet dough as for English empanadas. We'll get to that in a little bit. Roll out the dough, line the dough with bacon and sprinkle with Francisco spice mix again, and then put the filling on it and put more strips of bacon. As you can see, I folded the whole thing over. And you top with dough. This is not an open crust pie. This is a covered, enclosed thing. And I decorated it a little bit and then baked it for an hour and came out pretty tasty. Okay, Francisco spice mix, which it's used whenever he says fine spices in this book, which, as I said, has 506 recipes. Get this book, it's really good. It's 4 parts black pepper, 4 parts ginger, 2 parts nutmeg, 1 part cloves, and a little bit of saffron. Unlike other fine spice powders that are common in period recipes, there is no cinnamon in this. So often he will say fine spices and cinnamon. But if he doesn't say and cinnamon, that's just the fine spice, nothing else. Now, the sweet dough for English empanadas. On one page, as I'm sure those of you who've dealt with period recipes before, one recipe often refers to a prior recipe and then changing it a little bit. So the prior recipe was sweet dough for turnovers. And then if you want to make the English empanadas using the sweet dough for turnovers, the previous recipe, except you make these changes to it. You are using the sweet dough for turnovers says a pound of flour. A pound in this case is 12 ounces. However, for making the English empanadas, you add a third more flour, which gives us our 16 ounces. So you really are using a pound of flour. And sugar. This dough is a little sweet. It's not excessively sweet. And I use butter instead of lard, 4 eggs and 4 yolks. That was really sticky. I ended up using more flour. You could try to do this with fewer eggs because that's where the moisture comes from. That's what's making it sticky. So if you want to try this, don't use so many eggs or be prepared to use more flour because this dough was very, very sticky when made to the um, measurements in the recipe. It After I added more flour to it so that it worked fine, I ended up with more dough than I needed to make the empanada. I think I used about 75% of the dough. It was easy to roll, a little elastic, not excessively, so it didn't spring back a lot. It was not too hard. It wasn't hard to eat, so it didn't get really to the inedible pie kind of crust that some period recipes seem to call for. Um, as I said, slightly sweet, reasonably sturdy. I could pick up, as you saw, I did not cook the empanada in a pie pan. And it you can pick up the whole pie by itself and it doesn't fall apart. So it's reasonably sturdy dough and yet still tasty. So other than the stickiness, um, it's a good dough recipe. And this book, since it's the art of cooking, pie making, pastry making, and preserving, has a lot of pie crust recipes. So pie crust recipes, yay, we like that. Okay, now we're done with turkey things. How are we doing on time? Oh, look, I'm just zipping through this. Yay. So we'll have time for questions because I'm sure there's lots because I'm zipping through so fast.
There was one question.
Yes,
Do you soften the butter for the empanada dough, or does it need to be
I
cold?
I um generally mix my dough in the Cuisinart. I cut the butter I dice it basically and throw it in to the Cuisinart and give it a couple pulses and then start putting in the eggs so that the butter will get into the flour, will be well mixed into the flour before adding the eggs.
Yeah, that was from Aldith asking that question, and then we have Ivar saying that the household eggs are extra large, and that maybe it called for four because their eggs were smaller, maybe. And then Lynn said, "What size eggs did you use?"
We've
So,
already answered that. Very good.
and then there was a previous comment that I missed. It was about the neck skin sausage. The wondering if Heloise, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, wondered if the neck skin would be more intact if it was a period preparation, like rather than split down the middle. More like a modern sausage skin. So.
Yes, quite possibly. I have never um, skinned a bird that still had all those, head and neck parts still attached to the body. So, yes, that probably would work better where you have an actual tube of skin
Mhm.
as opposed to a big flat piece that you then have to wrap around something. Um, I would imagine it would also make it harder to get the meat and bones of the neck out. So it's a trade-off as to which which is up to your kitchen skills.
I could
Um,
say that I have butchered turkeys, and you can basically kind of peel it backwards. If you take the head off, you kind of like peel it back and then kind of strip it off the neck. Because
And
there
you
is a
still end up
connective
with
tissue there that is pretty easy to,
do you
um,
still end up with a tube?
yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, then that's probably what they did. I did not have the facilities to do that, but
Yep.
that would make the whole neck sausage extravaganza work much, much more easily
Well,
if you
and
had a
when you buy a
tube.
butchered bird, it's already cut, so
Right, right. Okay, squash. There are several recipes in Martinez Montino for squash. I'm only going to review one of the recipes here, and it's a stuffed squash. because, well, the bird didn't have any stuffing, so we have to have stuffing somewhere. So we have stuffing in our squash. Duchess Eleanor did a class earlier today on pumpkins and squash in period. She's done that class at other times, and there is a link here for her handout from previous escapades with squash. Besides the one we're doing, the other recipes are how to prepare squash, squash stew, squash for meat days, a stuffed squash dish other than the one we're doing today, squash with an egg crust, fried squash, round squash stew, and sops of round squash. I have done the sops of round squash, and that one's tasty too. I obviously did it with a round one, sort of like an acorn squash, except it was more spherical and not as ridged. I'm not sure what variety it was, but this recipe that I'm reviewing today, stuffed squash for fish days, which has, as many period recipes do, has a variety of options on this. So there are it lists other ways to stuff the squash in addition to the one I used in what I'm going to show you. But so that there's multiple ways to use this particular recipe. I just only did the one that appealed most to me because it had cheese in it. So I used butternut, as you can see, which is one of the ones that Eleanor said is a modern variety that has some similarities to the period one. So a good choice. Just cut them in half long ways and clean out the seeds. And then put them cut side down in salted water to boil them a little bit, softens up the meat so that you can scrape them out, but you scrape them out carefully because you're making squash dishes, squash boats that will then put the filling in. You fry up the insides with some onion and butter. Add some herbs. When Martinez Montino says fine herbs, he means parsley, cilantro, and mint. I don't much care for mint, so in this particular one, which means we don't often have mint in our refrigerator, but we often have parsley and cilantro. So I use the parsley and cilantro and skip the mint. And then you put in eggs and scramble dry. And again, like with the neck sausage, put it out on a cutting board and chop it up fine. And then we add some breadcrumbs and good cheese. When I initially did this, I did it with Chev, and I decided, and that was fine, was perfectly fine soft goat cheese, but that I wanted cheese that had a little more oomph to it, which is why here I'm saying to use some brie instead, because I like stronger cheese flavors. If you like something more mild, then go with the Chev. 3 teaspoons of the spice mix, a little sugar and some cinnamon and salt. And you add 1 raw egg. It doesn't end up too runny. There's the picture of it turned out on the board to chop up. Stuff them into the little squash boats you've made. Put cheese on top and grease the baking pan and dab with butter. I use butter. The recipe says marrow. I use butter. Butter's easier to find. Butter's cheaper, and they're both tasty animal fats. So if you have ready access to marrow, use that instead. But I generally will use butter when it says marrow. And you bake them up, and they're quite tasty. So, and now we go on to the chestnut soup. This chestnut soup was very simple. You boil them up and then grind them up again using a food processor. In period, they fed kitchen servants food. Now we feed our kitchen servants electricity. That is my attitude towards using the Cuisinart. If you want to be, more serious and grind it all yourself, go right ahead. I did not want to
The
put in
question
that
what
level
are
of effort.
we have a question? What are cheese sops?
Cheese sops. Oh, sops is bread that you put under your food to, get all of the tasty juices. And cheese sops are those that have cheese on them. There are several different kinds of sops in Martinez Montino. Some he just refers to it as like cheese sops. Well, of course, everybody knows what cheese sops are. I don't have to explain it to you. And in other ones, he will have a recipe for like cream sops or various other kinds of sops. So some there are recipes for in the book, and some are just referred to, and you should know how to make them. Which of course is not useful for those of us who don't necessarily know how to make them, and you just have to figure it out. But yeah, sops are the bread underneath to catch the juices. I would recommend, if my cat's trying to get onto the computer, sorry. If you're making something that's particularly juicy, bread that will soak up juices better is what I would recommend. I made one of the capon recipes from Martinez Montino several weeks ago, and we had brioche bread lying around the house, and oh, that soaked up that juice really, really well. So, but whatever bread you've got, it's good for soaking stuff up, is what I would recommend for sops. This one's easy. Boil the peeled chestnuts. Ivar and I gathered these chestnuts. We did not buy them in the store. We went to the chestnut Yupik and got them. And you peel them, which is a pain in the butt, and then you boil them and grind them up. You've got some toasted bread that you have soaked in vinegar, which you add in there, and you add parsley, mint. I had mint left over from the turkey, so I used mint. Parsley and mint and cilantro, chop that up, throw everything there into the food processor with some of the spice mix and some cinnamon. It will be very thick, so add some of the broth from boiling the chestnuts and some of the vinegar to get to whatever consistency of soup you want. It should be very sweet, a little thick, and brown. As you can see from the picture, yes, it's brown. It's not a particularly pretty soup, but it was reasonably tasty. I made it quite thick. I like soup that's very thick. You could thin it some more. With the vinegar and the honey in it and all the other things, it is a sweet and sour kind of thing, but that, as you may know from other period recipes, sweet and sour was something that they did a lot. So that is the soup. And that is the end of the show. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we can have questions, and you can ask me about the turkeys and the squash and the chestnuts and other things. Spanish food in general, if you want.
I'm curious about the amount of vinegar what was the amount of vinegar for the chestnut soup?
Well, I had about a couple thick slices of bread. The equivalent of that. I had big chunks of bread.
Mhm.
And I put them in a small bowl and mostly covered them with the vinegar.
Oh, wow. A lot of vinegar then.
Well, no, because then I took the bread out of the vinegar to put it into the food processor with the chestnuts and everything else. So it was that vinegar remaining in the bowl and the chestnut water remaining in a separate bowl that I used to thin the soup down to a soup consistency, because without those additional liquids, that was not soup. That was very thick.
Mariana wants to know if it's a malted vinegar or wine-based vinegar or
I
something
used
else.
I used wine vinegar. It was handy. I like it.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then Robin asked, what's the page number for the stuffed squash for fish
Oh,
days?
oh, did I not put that in
And
there?
Mariana says thank you.
Did I not put this stuff?
Also, I do have to mention that Eden did comment, ooh, fancy earlier.
Ooh,
So
fancy for
it was right when we were talking about cheese stops and
stuffed
No,
squash
it was when you hand harvested your own chestnuts.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, after
yes,
that.
yes. Stuffed squash for fish days, page 365. Yes, there's a chestnut for those of you who are local to me. I live in San Francisco, if you didn't know that. Down the peninsula, down not quite to San Jose, but down that general direction, there's a chestnut you pick. So, and it's the time of year to go and do that if you are so inclined.
That
Sorry
is
to
pretty
interrupt.
fancy.
Where? I live there. Where? I need that.
Um, it's Ivar, what is the place called? Oh, Ivar, you're muted if you're trying to say something.
Yeah, I'll just a moment. I'll look that up and put it up on the chat.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Is it Skyline?
Yes,
Yes.
Skyline. Skyline is the place. Skyline
Oh,
just
like around Skyline College, like some
no.
room
The name of the place is
Gotcha.
Skyline Chestnut. So if you Google Skyline Chestnuts, you should be able to find them.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
And they have American, European, and Asian chestnut trees. They're all kind of mixed together.
That's awesome.
And if you get there early enough in the season, I'm not sure if this is passed or not. They also will sell you chestnut honey, which is nice.
Okay, yes, it is called Skyline Chestnuts. Recommendation, don't go on a weekend, go on a weekday, particularly if
Yeah.
it's been windy beforehand. If you go on a weekend, it tends to get mobbed with families with lots of little kids.
Yep.
And wear good stout shoes because the site is quite steep.
Got it.
There's a question for the link to the cookbook itself. I think, Juana, you said that you were going to share the link to the presentation, which I would imagine has a link to the book, or at least the title of it, correct?
Yeah, let me see if I can get you.
And then we just have another comment from Eden that she made a Spanish dish today and toasted bread and vinegar panade that used about 1.5 tablespoons of vinegar and 1-inch thick slice of bread, diced and toasted. So you may not need quite so much vinegar.
I did not use all of the vinegar
Yeah.
that was
But you did douse it. You tried to get it to soak it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Sal is asking what kind of bread did they have at the time and might have used for the chestnut soup.
I'm not well, there's a couple of references to specific types of bread in the book, but they don't give you any recipes for the bread because, well, that would make too much sense. So I just used what one of our local bakeries refers to as herb slab, which is basically a not particularly oily focaccia. I just posted the Amazon link. You can use whatever bookseller you like, but just because it the ISBN and all the other things for the cookbook.
And Colin Ann is asking if there's a link to the presentation for today for our handouts. I don't think you shared those yet, so
I don't. I will have that. But I have not put it together as a handout as yet. It is together as a PowerPoint, which you just saw. The other link I'm just now putting into the chat is my early modern Spanish food little website thing that has all kinds of information on food of this time and place, not just the recipes that I did today. The recipes I did today, however, I will be adding to that. So you will be able to find them in multiple places in the handouts when I get them done, that Talina will put somewhere where we can find them, and on my little website thingy. And looks like Fee has a question.
Hi. So you mentioned the sizing would be closer to a wild turkey. Do you think the flavor would have been more gamey than
Yes.
like a wild
Oh,
turkey?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Most definitely. Because any kind of meat critter that you're eating, what it eats has a profound impact on what we taste. And what turkeys that you buy in the store are fed and what wild turkeys eat, vastly different. So you get vastly different tastes. But as I said, I didn't have access to wild turkey, so I used what I could get.
I mean, they run wild here. You could come visit.
Yeah, they have wild ones in front of Sarah and Kelly's house, but they're
Our
also,
HOA is full of them.
yeah, it kind of depends on whether or not you like your neighborhood birds. Some HOAs want to get rid of them because they don't like them, and some places are like, oh yeah, there are extra pets and we feed them. So if you wanna do a little culling of your flock, now you have recipes to cook them.
I have a question, if the cookbook mentions olive oil, or is there a role of olive oil in Spanish cuisine come later? And that's from Daniel.
Oh no. They they use a lot of olive oil, but there's also cooking fats in historical Spanish cooking is political because, in 1492, besides Columbus having his little adventure, there was also kicking the Jews and the Muslims out of Spain. Some of them left and some of them stayed and converted. But the ones who stayed and converted, the people who had always been Christians, were very suspect of these people, of these so-called new Christians. And one of the ways new Christians could prove that their conversion was sincere was to cook their foods with pig fat. So pig fat, as well as olive oil, is very common in Spanish cooking because if you cook with the fat of a pig, you are quite obviously not a Jew and not a Muslim. So it has to do with, all kinds of evil, racist kinds of things, but that is how that affects the cooking. So yes, they used olive oil, but they also used a goodly amount of lard. And butter too, because butter's tasty.
Kong says that heritage turkeys are closer to period flavor, but matters whether or not you made the reservation to buy last year, which I guess, that's more complex process, right? To get a heritage turkey.
And how much you want to spend on your culinary experiment. So, like I said, since this is bird one of two birds this month, it's like, no, I'm getting a cheap bird. But if you want to get a fancy, expensive bird and your budget allows, have fun with that. And I would love to hear what your experiments tasted like.
I'm a value shopper, as Talina would say, and I'm always on the lookout for a deal. So
yeah, but wrapping it in bacon and wrapping it in paper, even though
that's gonna help.
Cheap bird, it still makes it juicy, and the bacony part is good. So
And then
But
Eden,
yes, they did that. Olive oil is used in the book.
yeah, and Eden also mentioned that olive oil has been here since Romans came, and then Andreas says before, and I'm not really sure if what's that which one it's in regard to, but I would assume it was related to the time of olive oil use.
Yeah, and Spain is to this day was in Imperial Roman times an exporter of olive oil, and they still are.
Mhm.
I mean, when Ivar and I were traveling across Andalusia, going, from Seville to Granada to Cordoba, you could see olive trees to the horizon. It
Wow.
was just huge, huge amounts of olives. And if you want to know about olive oil in great depth, just press that button on Talina and she will go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to tell Eden about my mom's story about Turkey in Spain. The world is really round. My mommy told me so. She sailed all the way around it. When they were in Spain for Thanksgiving as well as for Christmas. And in Spain, turkeys are raised for Christmas. Turkeys are not raised for Thanksgiving, obviously, because they don't celebrate Thanksgiving. So when she went to the local butcher in November to ask about getting a turkey, like about a week before the holiday, the butcher was a little confused, but when they finally understood that she wanted a turkey next week rather than next month, and that it was for a big family feast and this was an important thing, once the butcher understood that, it's like, okay, we will get you a turkey that's, as big as we could get. So as big as they could get meant that they fed it right up to the last minute. The bird was delivered to them. It was still warm from its own body heat. It had been slaughtered that morning so that the bird could get as big as possible, because you keep feeding it up right till the last minute.
And Lynn had mentioned, okay,
Did
so
they at least remove the head? Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. Probably not the neck though,
That's
because
the
they
question
were
I forgot to ask my butcher that I need to still do.
yeah. Though there's a great recipe in Martinez Montino. It's for capon, but you could do it, I suppose, with the turkey. You need to have a bird that still has head and feet attached. It's great fun. It's stuffed with a egg and herb and liver stuffing. But what you do is you cut a slit in the back of the neck. You take the feet and you put them through that slit in the back of the neck so that the feet with their little claws are sticking up behind the head so it looks like antlers. Yes, Eden, you
Okay.
got it right. Exactly like that. Yes. And it looks like antlers. I was calling it antler chicken, but Ivar was more clever and decided it was Hern the hen. Um, but it's tasty and it's showy. And, if you can find a bird that has head and feet still attached, do that. It's fun.
So Kong had a question about which olive oil do you use, Juana?
Well, for just, random sauteing things, just as, fat in the pan to cook stuff, I'm cheap. I use pomace. If it's other things where the olive oil is more what you're going to be part of what you're going to be tasting more of, the nice olive oil that Ivar gets at Trader Joe's. I think it's a California olive oil.
Oh, yeah.
We have three grades we use. There's the Palmas for general frying. There's the Trader Joe's Italian or Spanish extra virgin olive oil for things that we're cooking things in and eating. And then for dressing things we're eating, like for dressing salads, I use the high grade California olive oil that Trader Joe's has. So it's just depends on how we're eating.
And he does most of the grocery shopping, so he knows what it is we're getting.
Comparing it
Oh,
Italy
the
to
question on Hern the Hen, Hern, it's a pagan god associated with stags.
ah.
He's a hunting figure, a human hunting figure male who has stag antlers growing out of his head.
Are we talking about Cernunnos?
Similar, another name for Cernunnos, yes.
Gotcha.
And then there's also a comment that in Italy the turkey is available year round and is a common veal substitute. That's interesting.
Yeah,
At
that
least
is
in North
interesting.
Italy.
That is interesting.
You mean at the time or now?
That's comparing Italy to Spain, so I would assume right now.
Oh, I-
Eloise
Heloise,
is the
Yeah, and it's now. It's you go in an Italian grocery store, and you're gonna see cutlets of turkey breast. Like
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, like cutlets of turkey breast are
right.
kind of common,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
but do
yeah,
they
that's
have,
fair enough
are they
actually.
selling whole turkeys year round or just the breast?
I didn't ever
Uh,
see whole turkeys there, but they are raising turkeys for food,
Hmm,
not
yeah,
just for Christmas or
right.
Thanksgiving.
no, not only that, it's just not even traditional at all for Christmas. Like that's a funny thing that
Right.
in Italy it's just not traditional at all for the holidays. I mean, maybe some families, but so it's eaten year round. And I was very surprised when I came to the US and I saw it only very, very attached to Thanksgiving. That was or Christmas. That was funny.
Yeah, it's almost for Thanksgiving in the US, turkey's pretty universal, but for Christmas, it's common, but not what everybody has. And what used to be the one of the common things to have locally here in San Francisco, in addition to your turkey, was Dungeness crab, because as Dungeness crab season used to start around Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
It's now coming in more like January or February, which is screwing up all the people who grew up with having crab with their turkey.
Wow.
turkey chorizo. Eden said that you can get turkey breast in Spanish groceries regularly, not the whole birds, but a fair amount of turkey chorizo too. That's very interesting.
Well, if you get, chicken sausages of various sorts here in the US, it's why not getting, if you're
Yeah.
only eating the breasts of the turkey there in Spain and perhaps in Italy, the rest of the bird can go to sausage quite easily.
Which is too bad because that's the worst part, the breast.
Not if you wrap it in bacon and then cover it in paper
Uh,
while you're cooking it.
yeah.
Then it won't dry out. Oh, Daniel, I thought you were raising your hand, but no, that's your kitty.
Speaking of turkey, actually, apparently, although I haven't researched the truth of this statement, but I think the earliest ever recipe that calls for a turkey is in Scapi's, which probably many of you are familiar with that. It's a recipe book from 1571, 1570, Italy. And I've been reading that book. It's amazing. And
Oh, yes.
it has a recipe that calls for the Indian hen or Indian chicken, and then you read it and he explains what it is, and you're like, oh, that's a turkey.
Yes, yes.
And it's
And
very
there's going
funny.
to be a class at the in-person symposium in February on the history of turkeys, of people.
Nice.
Yes, and Scapi is marvelous.
Yeah.
Scappy's my hero.
So, and as I said, I don't know how many of you took Eleanor's class on the squashes earlier today, but as I listed, there's several squash recipes in this book. The two that I have tried have been quite tasty. It being squash season, it's likely I'll try a few more. And we had for dinner last night, we had the turkey with the sauce and the turkey empanada for dinner. So, and live to tell the tale. It actually was reasonably tasty. So, and as I said, doing the sauce that way, it's different from traditional gravy. It is somewhat sweet because, as you noted, it has sugar in it. But you can do it. You don't have to wait for the drippings and do it as a last minute frantic at the end before you serve your bird. So if you want to try that, you might want to do that.
Were
Are
there-
there squash tart recipes like you find in Scapi? No, there weren't any tarts. There are with sops. So if it's like, okay, yes, squash with a carbohydrate under it, but it's not a tart. In response to Eden's question here in the chat. And the filled squashes, it's, well, similar serving to a tart because it does have a shell. It doesn't have a crust, but it has the shell of the actual squash. So, which would make portioning out for a feast rather easy because everybody gets a half a squash, or every 2 people have to share a half a squash, depending on size of servings you want to give out. There's another one. There's a lot of things that are stuffed in an edible or potentially edible shell. There's a essentially stuffed grapefruit recipe. One sweet stuffing and 2 savory stuffings, which is really kind of weird because the word grapefruit is after this book was published. So they're not really grapefruit. They're some other form of citrus. I used pomelos. But that's another one where if you're doing a feast and you want individual portions, well, everybody gets a half of a fruit stuffed with whatever it is. And since it's, basically stuffed grapefruit, stuffed with savory things, if you wanted to give people weird stuff at your feast, things that they'll say, what is this? But it's actually tasty. But, oh, that looks so strange. Because sometimes it's fun to just try and stretch their experience of tastes. Pomelo. Pomelo's basically an older form of grapefruit. And we find them at our farmer's market when it's pomelo season. For the stuffed grapefruits, pomelos, yes, you can eat the rind because they are cooked. There's also recipes in the preserving part of Martinez Montino for candying the peels. Just like any other citrus peel, you can candy them. The recipe used what is in the word in Spanish at the time is the word that now in Spanish means grapefruit. But it could not have meant grapefruit in 1611 because grapefruits did not exist in 1611. They are excuse me, my voice is going, a hybridized man-made fruit. They're not. So there weren't any grapefruit, but that's the word they used. Because words change over time. Just like when at the beginning, when I talked about pavo, pavo had meant peacock. Now pavo means turkey, and pavo real means peacock.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording because
Oh, yes.
it's almost the top of the hour and
Time to go to another class. Yay. Okay.
Thank you, Juana.